Hey, welcome to episode number 1. This is the Mind of Charlie Herrera podcast. And honestly, I am excited to be here in this moment. It's the beginning of a new journey for me, a space of creative flow that I just enjoy tapping into, somewhere where I can speak my mind on different subjects that stimulate my thoughts and have helped me grow personally. And this is something I've thought about doing for quite some time now. So here it is. The time is now to put my thoughts into words and my words into actions. And so today I want to take a deep dive into one of my favorite things to study and, quite frankly, try to understand. And that is the subconscious, the subconscious part of the mind. We have the conscious and the subconscious. So, what is the subconscious? To begin with, just know that the subconscious has no limits, it is infinite and it is our lifelong dancing partner. And so we can understand it a little deeper. Let me read the definition of subconscious. Subconscious of or concerning the part of the mind which is not fully aware, but which influences one's actions and feelings. So we're not fully aware of it, but it still influences our actions, reactions, our feelings, our daily lives, our emotions. And it says that our actions and feelings live in the subconscious. So, what is that? That is our breath, that is our skills, that are our habits, our memories, our attachment styles. Now, when it comes to the breath, let's think about the breath. We don't even think about breathing. That is the subconscious part of the mind. It is operating on automatic, right? But when we think consciously of the breath, automatically we want to start taking a deep breath. Think about the breath. You want to take a deep breath. Go along your day. You're not even thinking about it, but you are breathing. And so, something else that lives in the subconscious are our skills. Now, think about the last time you learned a new skill. Or maybe think about a time when you were a child and you were learning a new skill, like riding a bike or swimming. Maybe recently you've taken a dance class. When you were learning this new skill, you were really paying attention. Let's go back to the example of riding the bike. You were really paying attention of the balance and the speed. Because if you don't have enough speed, you're just gonna flop right over. There's no balance. And then you start paying attention to the direction, right? And then your surroundings. And then how can I brake? How do I brake? How fast do I go? How do I go faster? You're paying attention to all these different details. So you're being conscious. And then over time, you stop thinking about it. You are no longer conscious of what you're doing, but you are more, the skill is more in the subconscious. You get on that bike, you drive the car, and you just go. I mean, can you remember the first time you try to drive a car? A little bit scary, right? Like you didn't even know how much pressure to put on the brake, and you were most likely whiplashing. And turning was a big deal. Now you do it listening to music and having a conversation, not a problem, right? You just drive that car, you just ride that bike, you're just swimming, right? So when we are learning new skills, we are conscious, paying attention, and then that gets moved into the subconscious, just like our habits and our actions, like our eating habits, right? That's why it's a little bit difficult to have a good eating habit because you need to make it a habit, repeated patterns and repeated actions. Our memories live in our subconscious. Has anybody ever reminded you of something you went through or something you experienced together? And it's like they picked out a long lost memory out of a part of your brain that you didn't even know existed. That is in the subconscious. That's why we have our fears and our emotions in the subconscious because a lot of our memories from our childhood live there. And sometimes we forget what we experienced or what we went through. And as adults, we start feeling certain things because of our memory. And our subconscious and our memory and our body and our mind, it's all connected. So that also lives in our nervous system. One of the biggest things that I like to talk about when it comes to the subconscious is fear. Because fear, like all other emotions, happiness, joy, they all live in the subconscious. And our deepest fears and wounds and traumas all reside in the subconscious. So when we are aware of a certain fear of ours, in order to heal that fear or to heal it in a way where we can try to understand it, we need to look into the subconscious part. We need to tap into the subconscious. And the way we do that, I think, right? And how can the conscious try to describe the subconscious? The way we do that is by not just looking at our fear, but trying to remember where the seed was planted. Now, I'm going to give you an example. For me, my one of my biggest fears growing up were clowns. Now, I remember being a teenager and just being terrified of clowns, terrified. And I would look behind the door or behind the curtains when I would walk into my room because I was terrified that there was clowns. And I know it sounds silly. And I was 6 foot tall, 15, 16-year old, and I was still very afraid of clowns. And I started thinking, where is this fear coming from? How did this get implemented? And I grew up watching a lot of scary movies and not by choice. My family would watch scary movies. My father loved scary movies, and he would be in his own world watching his movies, and he was always watching scary movies. I remember watching it, right, that clown movie, and that's where that fear came from. And he would also watch the Leprechaun movies and zombie movies and Frankenstein movies. I was I was actually counting the date of when he, or remembering the date when he took me to go see Frankenstein at the theater. And it's the Frankenstein that came out in 1992. So, which means I was about 5 or 6 years old. And I was watching that in the theater. I think I peed on myself. My point is that I grew up watching a lot of scary movies. And another movie, oh my God, another movie that I remember watching, and I know a lot of you can maybe relate with this one, was Exorcist. When that came out, I was terrified. And anyway, going back to my fear of clowns, I started looking back and I came to the conclusion that that's where I developed that fear from watching the movie It. And I don't even think I watched it. I must have just seen a scene or two that was enough for me to be terrified and to get planted into the subconscious part of my brain, right? And I lived and I grew up with that fear in my brain. That's how sensitive and that's how much of a sponge our minds are. And so um, that's how I figured that out. And now, so how did I overcome that fear? And I didn't even overcome that fear consciously, like trying to heal it. I overcame that fear by going to Universal Studios on Halloween with a couple of my friends and walking through mazes. And one of the mazes, without me knowing, we walked right into one of the mazes, and it was a clown maze. And I was actually having a blast the whole night because I knew a lot of the costumes when you're walking around, all the monsters, they're all people and masks. And so we were just having fun. And when I walked into that maze, that clown maze, I instantly realized it could have gone either way, to be honest. I could have been fucking paralyzed and traumatized even more, but I actually somehow went the other direction. And I realized how silly it was being afraid of the image of a clown because it was always just a human and it was always just pretend and make believe. But somehow I didn't process that until I was put in a fucking maze with all these clowns and I actually had fun with it and I was never ever afraid of clowns again and I had to face it and like I said, it wasn't something I did consciously or something that I, you know, what shadow work or whatever. Which, by the way, I'm gonna get into a little bit right now, but it's not something I actually consciously try to do. It's just something that happened. The universe placed me in that maze, and I got over that fear. And I promise you, after that, I stopped. This is crazy. Okay. I don't know if I dive deep into this detail, but I would walk into my room and I would look behind the curtains. I would look in my closet. I would look behind the door before I felt comfortable being in my own room as a kid and as a teenager. I need you to understand how deeply, deeply rooted these fears were, enough for me to have to do that. And I promise you, after this clown maze at Universal Studios, I never, ever looked behind the curtains or behind the door anymore longer. I was healed of that. It was removed from the subconscious. That tightness, that fear, that whatever the heck, however that all that works, that lives in the body and the mind, it went away. It healed in that moment, and I had fun with it. And actually, um, I remember listening to Jordan Peterson podcast, and he was talking about how in his practice, in order to help one of his patients overcome the fear of riding an elevator, was to walk to the elevator with her. And as she freaked out, he would reassure her that they would not get in the elevator. He would go step by step. Let's just look at the elevator. Now let's just touch the elevator. Now let's just get in and out of the elevator without going anywhere. Slowly. I don't remember through how many sessions, but he explained that it was a slow process and that eventually they started riding the elevator and the fear was gone. And another example that I've heard is people that are afraid of certain animals. Um, they will find an image online, right? So let's say you're afraid of spiders. You can find an image online and then just look at the image. I know this sounds crazy. And then maybe just touch the screen to try to overcome that fear. The mind isn't the only thing that is affected. When you watch a scary movie, what is the person that is scared doing? Typically, they are doing a shallow breathing like this, right? And they are hyperventilating because what they are seeing or what they are experiencing is happening in their mind. Well, whatever they're experiencing, it's being processed in their mind, and their mind is shocking their body. And in return, the low oxygen is affecting the mind in return because they're not breathing correctly, right? So what's going on? The mind is tripping out. The subconscious is getting loaded with fear. The conscious mind is no longer there. When we are afraid, we cannot think correctly, we cannot process food, and we cannot mate, and we can't sleep. All these things happen when we are afraid. And so it's a traumatic experience when it comes to fear, and then they get deeply, deeply rooted, not in just into the mind, but also into the body. My point is that it gets ingrained into the nervous system as well. And that's why practices like yoga and stretching and deep breathing are very important when we are trying to heal ourselves of fear. And so, okay, I'm getting out of the subject a little bit here, but I just wanted to touch on how fear lives in the subconscious, which in turn also lives in the nervous system. All very complicated subjects and things to try to understand, but very, very important when it comes to the subconscious mind. And so I just want to share, some final thoughts on the subconscious. And I invite you to look a little deeper to try to find the root of this fear, to bring awareness to this root. And that is the beginning of healing. And when you find the root of this fear, you might need to let something out, right? To release a block. Or you might need to let something in, like some self love or Something as simple as acceptance. Just trust your intuition in that moment. And so, yeah, when we become aware of our subconscious, when we start to work on the subconscious, it is a deep dive and it's not easy and there's no wrong or right way to do it. And there's no rush in it either. Sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes it pops right in front of you and you have no choice but to face these things. And so I wanted to just kind of dive deeper a little bit more into the shadow self, right? Because that's a big word that we hear right now when it comes to healing. I'm healing my shadow self or I'm doing shadow work. And I just wanted to touch a little bit on that when we become aware of our shadow self, we are entering the subconscious mind. And I feel like that's something that isn't discussed enough. It's the main factor in shadow work. The subconscious is the main factor in shadow work and childhood trauma healing. That is the journey that you need to go into. That's why when people bring up the shadow work or childhood, it can be a little confused. Like, well, what do you mean? What does that even mean? And so to maybe just to connect the dots, at least for myself, what works for me, what has worked for me is to realize that the shadow and the childhood stuff and the memories and the traumas and all those experiences live in the subconscious. And so tapping into the subconscious is doing shadow work. It's tricky. I know it's tricky. It's tricky to get the conscious to understand the subconscious, but simply beginning with awareness can can take you a long far way with your healing process. Awareness is the key. It's the beginning of the journey towards healing. And there's, like I said, no set way to do this. And everyone is on their own unique soul's journey. Everyone's experience on this earth has been different. And so healing and processing different things is going to look different for everybody. And that's okay wherever you are, however old you are, as long as you have awareness and self love and acceptance. And just know that this stuff, it's a lifelong journey. Sometimes we go through a good period of time in our lives where we don't feel these heavy emotions and heavy thoughts. And then all of a sudden they start coming back, and you're like, wait a second, I thought I processed this. Or wait a second, what is this new thing coming up? And that's just how life is. I mean, depression and anxiety are at all-time highs in the world right now, and you're not alone. Nobody's alone. Everybody's feeling these things, especially right now in this time and age. And so having the proper tools to be able to process these things is important. And what are these tools, right? I hear also, that's something also I hear a lot. And the thing about it is that find the tools that work for you. For some people it's hiking, for some people it's art. What is essential? Um, like counseling and therapy. Those are tools. Those are very important tools. And it doesn't mean you have to do it for the rest of your life or for a long time. Maybe jump into it, explore it. Spiritual work, maybe. For some people, and I'm not a big fan of it, but for some people, religion is a tool for them. Prayer is important. Words of affirmation, tools. These are the tools. Riding a bike, doing yoga, doing breath work, writing in a journal. These are the tools. Having rituals. And I'm going to get into rituals in a little bit right now too, because rituals are for the subconscious. And for a long time, I didn't understand rituals, and I didn't look down upon them, but I they didn't resonate for a long time. And then um, actually, not too long ago, recently, I've come to realize that rituals are for the subconscious. Words of affirmation are for the subconscious. You're consciously doing the ritual, whatever the ritual is. And I'm not talking about no witchcraft shit like that. No, I'm talking about maybe writing down your thoughts and make that a ritual and then ripping it up, holding a stone in your hand and those deep thoughts that are so heavy, just meditating on them and releasing them into the rock and throwing that rock into the ocean. A ritual, and you find whatever works for you, whatever tools, whatever rituals, and try different things. And some things might feel silly, and then some things won't resonate with you. And then you find the things that kind of do work for you or do feel good for you. And those are the things that you want to stick to. Just find whatever works for you. Find whatever works for you. And so, for me personally, the way that I started kind of tapping into the subconscious was by observing the unfairness. The way I actually started becoming aware, which I feel like a lot of people, this happens to a lot of people. The way you start becoming aware is by observing the unfairness of the world. You turn 19, 20, 21, you're out of high school, and you start realizing, wait, this is the world? Wait, people are hungry every day in my own city? Wait. There, why are we fighting these wars? Wait, why are these people on the other side of the country suffering these things? The healthcare system, the history books. When you start realizing the history that you were taught is either not accurate or was hiding something, when you become aware of these things, that's awareness. And you start feeling like, what the fuck is happening? What can I do to change the world, right? That is the beginning of a journey. That, well, at least for me personally, that was the beginning of my journey. What can I do? And so through trial and error, you start realizing the best thing that you can do is heal yourself, heal your subconscious, work on yourself, and try to radiate love or light or just compassion, like as much as you can, as often as you can, with as many people as you can, and patience and having patience. And that will, imagine everybody did that in the world, where would we be, right? And so that is at least my awakening. And that's how I started to become aware, like the world is really like this. And so I feel like that's why a lot of college people are the ones, if you look back in history, people in college, young adults, are the ones that protest the most, are the ones that make the noise the most, because they start realizing they wake up from childhood dreams and high school. In high school, you're in a box and you have all these, outlooks and the world. You have no idea what the world is. Like, you think you know, and you kind of know, but you really don't know until you start those when you start turning 20, 21, 22. You start really realizing what's happening in the world. That's when you start getting mad. And at least that was my experience. A feeling of betrayal and being lied to. And maybe somebody told me, maybe I'm sure people told me about the world, or don't do this, or look out for this. But as a teenager and a young adult, you're in your own little world and your own little reality. And sometimes, actually, most of the time, we just have to learn these lessons on our own. And so I started realizing the world was unfair. And I started searching for God. That was like the second stage. The first stage was anger and awareness. And the second stage was like compassion and seeking what was God, who is God, what, because I wasn't raised religious, but I had a lot of friends growing up that were religious, Catholic, Christians, and Jewish. And I would ask myself, am I bad? Am I gonna go to hell? And I didn't even grow up believing in these things. The fear that is implemented through religion, and I'm not trying to bash on religion. I actually respect it very much because I know certain people that have changed their lives because of their beliefs, and that's their tool and that's their belief, and no one is greater than another person's truth, and if that is their truth, then so be it. But for me personally, when I hear about, and I'm big on history, and I'm a big historian. That was actually my favorite class and subject in high school and in college, um, studying history. And when I look back in history and I look at when the term or the images and the detailed descriptions of hell were written by a man and illustrated by a man, by his imagination, I started realizing, holy shit, something that was described and has been passed down for decades by a man. I was terrified myself. I started asking, am I going to go to hell for not believing in Jesus? Am I going to go to hell for not being religious? Right. And so I visited a lot of different religious um, places, did Bible study and studied Buddhism, and came across Krishna consciousness and yoga, and it was just a journey for me from going from I'm not religious, I'm scared because I don't believe in something, or I had my beliefs, but the book, am I supposed to be following a certain book, a certain set of rules, and if I don't, am I not gonna be saved? Am I not enough? Am I gonna be sent somewhere for eternity that burns? Those are the things that came up. That was my journey. Um, and that was only when I was like 17, 18, 19, 20, like around that time frame. And then when I came across Buddhism and Hinduism and Krishna and yoga, I those fears went away because I started to have a more grounded and well-rounded understanding of religion and spiritual practices. And I realized that fear is powerful. And I realized that ritual is powerful. And I realized that meditation and breathing is powerful. And it's crazy because I started also seeing that, like, people that meditate, actually religious people, I don't think this is a thing now, but 10 or 15 years ago, religious people looked down upon people that would meditate. And actually, they're the people deep into their religion would say that people that meditate are communicating with the devil. And then when I would hear things like this, I was like, wait, no, like, that's not even true. Have you even tried meditating? Have you tried taking a deep breath? You're connecting with yourself. That baffled me, really. But I'm getting besides the point here of what I'm trying to share. My point is that the way that I tapped into my subconscious was first anger and then seeking. And I stumbled upon yoga and meditation back in like 2011, I think it was, at a Earth Day festival. Um, I went with a group of friends, and we were there for the opening ceremony. And the opening ceremony was yoga. It was sun salutations, and I have never practiced it. And my group went along, and they were looking at the booths and all the vendors, and I went straight to participate. And ever since, I never stopped practicing all types of yogas, and um, yeah, yoga brought me a self awareness, really, and that self awareness brought me into my subconscious, my fears, and so here I am, and it feels like this dive into the subconscious is indeed a very, very deep dive. And for me personally, yoga has become a very big tool in my bag of tools. It's if not the main one of the main things, along with writing and expression. Yeah, I want to share a little bit more of some of the things have aided me on my journey, like patience, and just pausing. You know, doing breath work has allowed me to practice the pause before the reaction. Morning rituals have helped me as well. Acceptance, letting go, receiving, getting in better physical health, working on my mental health, practicing my spiritual alignment. And and here's the thing about these things. Life is a roller coaster. You're not going to be able to do all of them at 100% all the time. Sometimes our mental health needs a little work. Sometimes our physical health gets a little sloppy. Sometimes we walk away from our spiritual practices and then we come back to them. And the more we come back to them, and the more they get implemented into our subconscious part of the mind. And so then our abilities to live and experience a more calm and more peaceful life are more not guaranteed, but are more they're more possible. And also having these tools, you also know, at least I know at this age, that I'm not gonna stay in that positive state of mind. I'm not just gonna have positive experiences in the world. There will be negative experiences. There will be hardship. There will be loss. There will be failures. And so when we have a strong body and a strong mind and a strong nervous system and a strong spiritual connection and a strong conscious and subconscious, these experiences that life throws our way, they won't toss us and throw us on the floor anymore. We will be better prepared. We become spiritual warriors. We become light warriors. And yeah, things still hurt. Yeah, things still suck. Yeah, fucked up shit still happens, but we're better prepared to go through them and walk through them and integrate the lessons and understand the patterns. And maybe some of the stuff is karma. And so either way, it is a blessing. Influence those around you. And if we want to change the world, we got to change ourselves, right? And build up your nervous system, your subconscious and your conscious, so that lives hardships don't throw us off balance. And then when they do, we are able to get back up on our feet and have a fierce response, yet full of harmony. And sometimes the universe, you have no choice. The universe is gonna push you a little deeper so that you may learn the lessons. And sometimes it repeats over and over and over again for years until we finally learn the lesson. Or we learn how to set boundaries. Or we learn how to not walk into certain situations. This life isn't all about rainbows and butterflies. Especially right now, we're in a very, very unique time and space. History is going to look back at this time. So much has been happening. I mean, obviously, so much has always happened, right? But right now, it feels like back to back to back. And so we're in a time where we are required, and it is our duty to embody a spirit, a conscious, a subconscious mind, and a body that can withstand what's happening now and still be full of love and still be full of patience and still influence those around you. Remember, we are the ancestors of the future generations. What we do now will affect the future generations. It'll be passed on through our families and through those around us. And this in turn will change the collective consciousness. We're powerful individuals. And right now, we're self initiators. Right now, we're not following a teacher. There's no masses following one person to lead them. No, we're all leaders. We're all teachers, self healers. And that's what the world needs right now. We need the self healers and the teachers and the leaders to step up in their own practice, in their own self development. Keep going. I'm rooting for you. We need you. We need you to be the light so you can remind us of the light. And when you forget that you're the light, we'll remind you about the light. Everything, every piece of advice, wisdom that our ancestors left us to be good humans and good spirits here on earth are very important. And we're in a time now where we need to remember those, but also add to those for the next generations coming. And we need to rise the bar to the next level. We need to elevate to the next level of understanding, compassion, clarity, but not just that, also fucking boundaries and barriers and things that we will not tolerate. We need to make that known. But we also need to come to harmony. There's a lot going on right now, and I feel like we're battling our ancestors' wars, and that kind of stuff is coming from the subconscious. If we could just, it's very hard. There's billions of people, but if we can just keep going, just keep going, keep working on the subconscious, and maybe not in your lifetime, but maybe you will influence the next generation and pass it on. And so, yeah, that is the subconscious. And so, if we can heal ourselves, we can pray and hope that the world heals as well. And thank you for joining me today and for listening. And if you made it this far, I'm grateful beyond expression. And yeah, please like, please share, please subscribe. And I'm looking forward to the next episode. I'm looking forward to this journey that I have begun, and I hope that you were able to take something positive away. And just know that when I share these things, I'm sharing from a space of experience myself, of hardship and wanting to heal. And this journey isn't over. This self healing journey is not over for me either. And I would love to hear any ideas or anything that's helped you as well. Maybe you can inspire me as well or somebody else within this community. And so thank you for tuning in, and I'm out. Peace.